In modern warfare, power is no longer measured only by how destructive a weapon is. It is measured by how completely it collapses the enemy's assumptions. Russia's Avangard Hypersonic glide vehicle does exactly that. Not with explosions, not with battlefield footage, but with something far more dangerous: unanswerable uncertainty. NATO does not publicly panic over Avangard. There are no dramatic press briefings, no emergency speeches. But inside strategic planning rooms, Avangard represents a problem that has no clean solution. Avangard is not a missile in the traditional sense. It is a payload carried into space by an intercontinental ballistic missile, then released to glide through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds while maneuvering unpredictably. This distinction matters. NATO's missile defense systems were designed around predictable trajectories. Ballistic missiles rise, arc, and fall. Cruise missiles fly low and slow. Hypersonic glide vehicles do neither. Avangard lives in the gap between categories, and that gap is where defenses fail. The core problem NATO faces is detection. Early warning systems are optimized for ballistic launches. Satellites detect heat signatures, calculate trajectories, and feed data into interceptor networks. Avangard breaks this sequence. While its launch can be detected, its glide phase cannot be reliably tracked. Once it separates from its booster and begins atmospheric maneuvering, prediction collapses. There is no stable flight path, no fixed intercept window. Radar tracking becomes intermittent. Data becomes probabilistic rather than deterministic. And missile defense systems do not work on probability, they work on certainty. Speed compounds the problem. Avangard travels at speeds exceeding Mach 20. At that velocity, reaction time shrinks to minutes, sometimes seconds. Even if a tracking solution briefly appears, the engagement window is so short that command authorization alone consumes most of the available time. NATO doctrine assumes layered defense: detect, track, assign, intercept. Avangard compresses this entire sequence into a time frame that makes layers irrelevant. By the time one layer reacts, the weapon has already passed into another domain. Interceptor physics further complicates matters. Systems like Aegis, Patriot, and future European interceptors are designed to engage targets following known energy profiles. Avangard's glide profile allows it to bleed and regain energy dynamically. It can climb, dive, and turn laterally while maintaining hypersonic speed. Interceptors must not only match speed, but predict future position. Against Avangard, prediction fails. The math does not converge. Every maneuver invalidates the previous firing solution. This is why NATO officials rarely speak about Avangard directly. Unlike other Russian systems, S-400, S-500, Kinjal, there is no counter-narrative available. There is no upgrade path that fixes the issue. You cannot patch physics. You cannot software update reaction time. You cannot mass-produce certainty. Avangard does not overwhelm defenses by quantity. It overwhelms them by logic. From Russia's perspective, Avangard is not a war-fighting weapon. It is a deterrence stabilizer. Its purpose is not to be used, but to be impossible to stop. That distinction matters. NATO missile defense was never designed to block a peer nuclear force completely. It was designed to limit damage and protect against limited attacks. Avangard restores full penetration capability under any defense scenario. It ensures that no future shield can neutralize Russia's strategic forces. That guarantee alone reshapes global deterrence. Another uncomfortable reality for NATO is cost asymmetry. Missile defense is expensive. Sensors, interceptors, command networks, space-based assets all require continuous investment. Avangard exploits that imbalance. Russia does not need thousands of glide vehicles. A small number is enough. Each one forces NATO to spend exponentially more, attempting to compensate. Defense spending increases, but confidence does not. The return on investment collapses. There is also the issue of escalation management. Missile defense systems provide leaders with decision space. They allow time for assessment, communication, and de-escalation. Avangard removes that space. Its speed and unpredictability compress decision-making to the point where miscalculation becomes more likely. When leaders have minutes instead of hours, doctrine changes, thresholds lower, risks increase, stability erodes. NATO has explored theoretical counters, space-based sensors, directed energy weapons, next-generation interceptors. None are operational. Most are decades away. Even optimistic projections admit that defending against maneuvering hypersonic glide vehicles at scale is not feasible with current technology. The problem is not one of innovation, it is one of fundamental limitations. Atmosphere, speed, heat, and maneuverability create a domain where interception is no longer reliable. This is why Avangard does not need combat footage to be effective. Its power lies in silence, in classified assessments, in war games where blue teams fail repeatedly, in briefings where planners quietly adjust assumptions without public explanation. When NATO updates its strategic documents, Avangard is present, not as a named threat, but as an implicit constraint shaping every calculation. Avangard also changes alliance dynamics. Missile defense has always been a political tool as much as a military one. It reassures allies, it signals commitment, it promises protection. Avangard undermines that promise. If defenses cannot guarantee interception, assurance weakens. Deterrence shifts back towards mutual vulnerability. Smaller NATO states become more dependent on escalation credibility rather than protection capability. Russia understands this psychological dimension well. By deploying Avangard quietly, without theatrics, Moscow avoids provoking immediate countermeasures while still achieving strategic effect. There is no arms race headline, no dramatic treaty violation, just a subtle recalibration of power relations. NATO cannot protest what it cannot counter. It can only adapt internally. Critically, Avangard is not alone. It fits into a broader Russian strategic ecosystem. Sarmat-2 for delivery, perimeter systems for command continuity, and layered air defense to protect launch assets. Avangard is the tip of a structure designed to survive and penetrate under worst-case scenarios. NATO must consider the system as a whole, not as an isolated weapon. That holistic integration further complicates response planning. Some argue that future AI-driven defenses could solve the problem. But AI cannot predict a system deliberately designed to defeat prediction. Machine learning requires patterns. Avangard's value lies in pattern denial. Each glide profile can be unique. Each maneuver can be non-repeating. Training data becomes irrelevant. The system stays ahead not by being smarter, but by being unknowable. This brings us to the uncomfortable conclusion NATO planners face. There is no defense against Avangard in the traditional sense. There is only deterrence, redundancy, and risk management. The strategic balance shifts away from interception and back towards assured response. In that sense, Avangard is less revolutionary than corrective. It restores the harsh logic of Cold War deterrence under modern conditions. That restoration is why Avangard matters. It does not make war more likely, but it makes illusions more dangerous. It strips away the belief that technology can eliminate vulnerability. It reminds strategists that some domains cannot be dominated, only respected. And in doing so, it forces a recalibration of global security thinking. NATO will continue investing in missile defense. It will continue public messaging about resilience and innovation. But behind closed doors, Avangard has already done its job. It has reasserted strategic uncertainty as a permanent condition.
It has ensured that no shield will ever be complete, and it has done so without firing a single shot. In the end, Avangard is not about speed or stealth. It is about inevitability, about forcing planners to accept limits, about reminding the world that deterrence still rests on the inability to control every variable. NATO does not lack intelligence on Avangard. It lacks answers. And in modern strategy, unanswered questions are often more powerful than weapons themselves.